Nvidia continues to be the AI leader, but on today's episode, I don't want to take a closer look at Nvidia, but I want to take a closer look at its biggest competitor. And usually, when we think of competition for Nvidia, the first company that comes into mind is Advanced Micro Devices, AMD, and rightfully so. Right, the company recently announced their MI300, which is expected to go blow to blow with Nvidia's H100, and AMD is one of the main competitors in the consumer's graphics card. But I want to say there might be a bigger competitor to NVIDIA right now, and that is Intel. Let's take a closer look in today's episode. So as I am recording, Intel stock is sitting at $31.59, down roughly 2.8%, sitting at a market cap of $131 billion. So Intel is doing a lot, right? They're focusing on their manufacturing endeavors, but they're also increasing their technological movement in the CPU. One form of product that I believe barely gets talked about is Intel and their accelerators that are really well for the AI market. Like I mentioned, Intel is definitely a big competitor to NVIDIA here when we take a closer look at accelerators. Intel recently announced the Intel Arc, which is their consumer GPUs, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to take a closer look at Gaudi 2. And Gaudi 2 is their accelerator, their second generation accelerator after they bought this company in 2019, Habana. So when they bought Habana in 2019, they already had Gen 1, and Gen 1 is an accelerator which they call HPU, Habana Processing Unit. And Gen 1 was a 16 nanometer chip. They recently released Gaudi 2, which they mentioned is great for AI workloads, AI training, AI inference. And this is being built on 7 nanometer technology process manufactured by TSMC. So it's pretty interesting, right, to see Intel, who's really focusing in this manufacturing side, having their accelerator unit being built by one of their biggest competitors, TSMC. So if we take a closer look, we are going to see how Gaudi 2 is kind of continuing to improve its AI workloads and how the market is really kind of grabbing this solution right now, especially as NVIDIA's H100 and their A100s have such long lead times. There are reports that certain lead times are over 20 weeks, over 30 weeks. And if you are a company that's really trying to focus on artificial intelligence, you need some form of solution right now. And it does seem like this Gaudi 2 and by Habana and Intel is a great replacement. But before we take a closer look at that, there is another product that is competing against NVIDIA in the AI market, and that is the CPU, right? So Intel recently released their 4th generation Xeon processor, and the Xeon processor has an accelerator built in, and it also has a special acceleration that helps it do really well in artificial intelligence. They do mention compared to previous generations, it's up to 10x faster. And if you guys have been watching the channel, we did about a month ago, we did a story or a video of the case of running AI on CPUs. And I think right now the normal or this kind of thought process is going on that the only way you can kind of run AI workloads is through, or efficient AI workloads is through some form of accelerator via a GPU or something else. And there was this study by IEEE and Hugging Face that showcased that, hey, yes, maybe if you're dealing with extremely large language models, you do need some form of accelerator like a GPU. But Intel and their Xeon CPU, it's actually really well for certain AI workloads that are great for large language models. Maybe not your largest large language models, but small enough that maybe certain companies can kind of use. The CEO of Hugging Face recently said that more companies would be better serving focusing on smaller specific models that are cheaper to train and run. And this is where kind of Intel CPUs can do well in AI workloads. So not only do they have the GPU, the CPU market is still not dead. Like I mentioned, I feel like I see a lot of things right now showcasing that, hey, now that AI is taking over the data center, now that AI is taking over all these workloads, CPUs are pretty much gone, and the only real winner is going to be the GPU players. But that's not the case, as we saw from this study, that Intel Sapphire Rapid CPU was great at running certain large language models. So first, I want to make sure to say that, hey, Intel CPU products are still pretty strong. Obviously, that goes with any other kind of CPU players out there. We also now kind of pushing onto Gaudi 2. So we learned a little bit about Xeon. Now let's talk about Gaudi 2. Hugging Face, which is a huge company focusing in AI models, recently released this blog. And in this blog, they talk about how Habana on Gaudi 2 achieves more than 3 times the speed compared to the A100 when fine-tuning Bridge Tower, a state-of-the-art vision language model. So we can see that Habana Gaudi 2 is actually really competitive against NVIDIA's previous generation, the A100. And Intel, by no means, they're trying to say that their product is better, but they are saying that, hey, it is competitive. Right now, the fastest GPU and the fastest AI accelerator, by no question, is the H100 by NVIDIA. Number two is definitely still needed. Just because you're number one, there are numerous of companies that can do all the computation that they need with second place, and that's the A100. But in certain workloads, it is showcasing that Gaudi 2 is also a viable source to kind of do certain large language models. In this case, it was Bridge Tower, which was a state-of-the-art vision language model. Throughout the one thing that they do mention is, unlike many AI accelerators in the market, Gaudi 2 can be used with just a two-line change. And this is one of the biggest issues happening in the accelerator market, that if you want to change acceleration hardware, unless it's a main product, you have to rewrite your code. You have to implement a lot of line changes. But here we're seeing with Hugging Faces that with Gaudi 2, you don't have to implement many line changes. You need to do just two line changes, and Gaudi 2 will work on this large language model and solution.
I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for their subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
Another kind of great story showcasing Intel and their competitive case in the AI market is on June 27, there was a benchmark for ML Commons. And ML Commons is kind of this benchmark being used to kind of showcase, hey, how well certain hardware solutions do in certain machine learning tasks. And Habana 2 and 4th generation Intel Xeon Sapphire Rapid processors delivered leading performance and optimal cost savings for AI training. They do mention that, hey, right now the current industry narrative is that generative AI and large language models can only run on NVIDIA GPUs. New data shows that Intel's portfolio of AI solutions provide competitive and compelling options for customers looking to break free from the closed ecosystem that limit efficiencies and scale. And this is another shot fired at NVIDIA. One of the things that NVIDIA is getting attacked on right now is a lot of their solutions are very closed system. Obviously, if you are an investor of NVIDIA, that's kind of a bullish case. It kind of makes it very hard for customers to switch over to another hardware. But if you are a developer of some sort, this is something you hate. You like to have more of an open ecosystem environment. Intel is saying that that's where they're focusing on. They do mention that Gaudi 2, that accelerator, is one of only 2 semiconductor solutions to submit performance results to the benchmark for large language models training of GPT-3. So this benchmark has numerous tests. One of those tests was kind of training a GP3 model. And there are only 2 solutions that did this performance. The first is obviously NVIDIA, and it blew the water, right? The H100, by no questions, is the leader, like I keep discussing. But the only second semiconductor solutions to submit performance was Gaudi 2. And this is pretty interesting, right? Because I'm surprised why it wasn't AMD's MI250X running this test, or maybe an early run of the MI300 also being running this benchmark. So a lot of questions are coming out there. They do mention that Gaudi 2, an extremely compelling price performance alternative to NVIDIA's H100. I don't think Gaudi 2 should be compared to NVIDIA's H100. Like I mentioned, if you want the best of the best, you're going to pay the best price, but that's NVIDIA. But if you want number 2, which is more than enough for a lot of computational needs, you might go with the A100, or you might go with Habana 2, with Gaudi 2. Within this benchmark as well, there was also a lone CPU submission among numerous alternative solutions to perform a lot of these AI general purpose solutions. And that one solution, that one CPU submission, was Intel's 4th generation Xeon processor. And then this is another question for AMD, right? Hey, AMD, you're kind of boasting how well your EPYC server CPUs are for AI workloads. Why did you not submit a submission here to kind of benchmark these solutions? I'm a huge AMD investor. AMD is my number 2 position in my portfolio. But things like this always give me questions like, hey, AMD, what was the reasoning for you not doing any of these benchmarks? They do mention for a small number of customers who train large language models from scratch, they can use kind of general purpose CPUs. And this kind of goes back to this case study that we saw earlier in this episode, where if you are running maybe a small large language model, you don't need complete accelerators. You can be running single socket Intel Sapphire Rapid CPUs, and that would be enough to kind of train a lot of these models. Let's see, what else do I have here? So, taking a closer look at this article from HPC Wire, they talk a little bit more about this ML performance training benchmark. And the author pretty much mentions that, hey, Xeon is like a V100 class GPU. That's 2 generations ago for NVIDIA's GPU performance. And I think that's pretty impressive. It's true. So Xeon CPU is like 2 generations ago of its GPU. Now Gaudi is an A100 class today and is perfectly viable, as customers are telling us and getting more interested in adopting it. So again, the A100 is an amazing product for numerous AI workloads. The H100 is obviously the best, but if you want number 2, A100 is perfect. Unfortunately, right now there are rumors that Nvidia's H100 has around a 42-week lead time, and that likely varies by vendor. It might be longer, it might be shorter. They also mentioned that the A100 was even hitting the same level of supply, making it difficult to get Nvidia cards in 2023. So if you probably don't have your order in already for NVIDIA's H100 or A100, it's more than likely that you're not going to get these cards this year. And that's why the market is looking for alternatives. It does seem like one alternative that's ready to start shipping, that's doing really well in the market and has a lot of both backing from CPUs and other software solutions, is the Gaudi 2. And this is why I believe that Intel should now be kind of, when we think of a competitor to NVIDIA, it should not only be AMD. Intel definitely needs to be in that same discussion because their Gaudi 2 platform seems to do pretty well. The more I think about it and the more I talk about Intel, the more I get bullish in this company. I mean, this is a company that's really focusing here in the AI workloads with their accelerators. This is a company that's really kind of growing into the CPU market and improving their technology, even though AMD is beating them right now and is still taking market share. And thirdly, they are really focusing on this manufacturing endeavors. And even though this manufacturing push might be a big boatload of debtness, it can definitely kind of become a strong growth opportunity for the company if it does well. So in my opinion, Intel is a company that I enjoy as a turnaround story, but it definitely has a lot of bearish thesis that can definitely make the stock break even more. So definitely let me know in the comments below, guys. Are you bullish in Intel right now? Are you purchasing? Are you selling? What are you waiting for? The more, like I mentioned, the more I talk about it, I wouldn't be surprised that within a month, within 2 months, maybe I might start getting a small position into this semiconductor giant. So take care, have a good day, and see you next time.